Hi everyone, welcome back, and today I'm going to be editing an audiobook. So I'm going to be working in Adobe Audition. This is audio editing software and I'm using version 2025. And what I'm going to do is edit the audiobook so that it's compatible with Audible's ACX standards, and these are Amazon's audiobooks. Now, the first thing you want to do when you're editing an audiobook like this is make sure you know what the standards are and the specifications for the audio. And so what I do is go to ACX. So let's get to doing this. Navigate to this page. This is acx.com, and that's where you get the specifications. And I go to check audio quality. So on this page where it says check your audio quality, you're going to see ACX submission requirements. So when you click on that, you are going to be taken to this page which shows you the ACX audio submission requirements. And so if you scroll down, you will see the different requirements for Audible audiobooks. For example, you're supposed to include opening and closing credits, a retail sample of 5 minutes or less. It tells you about how to name the files, and then tells you about the submission requirements for audio quality. So this is the page that tells you all the specifications, and so as I'm editing, I'm using this as my guide. So let's go into Adobe Audition and start the editing. So once in Adobe Audition, you want to open your files in the waveform editor, which is this panel here, and not the multi-track. So you don't want to be in the multi-track view. Cancel that. So I can double click in this pane to open a file. Let's look for a file that we can use for this tutorial. So I have some files that I've used, so I'm just going to open. You can open multiple files or you can open a single file. I'm just going to open multiple files into the editor, and there you go. The exact workflow might differ for you than for me depending on the files, but for me, one thing I've noticed about the files I received is that they are way too loud. You can see from the waveform, and I think they're actually clipping. So if I play the file, I will be able to tell if it's clipping or not.
Chapter 7.
So it's going into the red right there.
International work begins to flourish.
Let me turn that down. So you can see it's going into the red, and since I've worked on this before, I know a lot of it goes beyond and is clipping, as you can see. So the first thing I want to do with this file is fix the clipping, and Audio Audition has a very nice way of fixing the audio so that it's not clipping. And what you do is you go up here to Effects and then go to Diagnostics, and under Diagnostics go to the declipper. When you click on the declipper, there's a panel that opens up right here on the left, and you have options of how you want to process the file. And for me, I was using restore heavily clipped files. If yours are not so seriously clipped, then you can use restore lightly clipped files, but I'll use that. Then I'm just going to keep the defaults that it gives me, but you can always tinker with it if you are familiar with audio editing. Once you've clicked on heavily, once you've selected the preset, you want to go up here and scan the file, and Audition will scan, and then at the bottom here you'll see 543 problems detected, 0 problems repaired. So for you to fix the clipping, you want to click on Repair All, and it will go through its paces, and you'll see the waveform has changed it has fixed the clipping. So when I play through this, if you look at the meter at the bottom, you can see now it's nicely in the orange, which means it's no longer clipping. So that's the first thing I would do. Now, if your audio is well recorded, you have no reason to mess with that. The second thing that I want to do for my file is look at the gaps between the narration, and you can see some of the gaps are really big, and so I want to be able to reduce these gaps between the narration but still keep the audio flowing naturally. And the cool thing is, with Adobe Audition, you can do this automatically for the whole file. So for you to delete the silences in Adobe Audition automatically but still keep the narration flowing naturally, you want to go back up to the Effects panel, Effects tab, and then go to Diagnostics. You go to Diagnostics and then you go to Delete Silence. And the same place where you have the other panel that I just showed you before, you find this Delete Silence. And then you have these settings. The first one is telling Adobe Audition what silence is in your file. In this case, I'm just going to go with the default, and it's when a signal is below minus 45 decibels for more than 500 milliseconds. What's important is right down here where it says shortening silence. You want to specify the length of silence that's acceptable for your file. And what I found for this style of narration is that 300 milliseconds is good enough to keep the pacing good. But you can always shorten it if you're going for a faster pacing with your dialogue, or you can lengthen it if you want slower pacing in your dialogue. So that's where you adjust that. So I like what I have here, so I'm just going to scan the file again. And Adobe Audition is going to look at the file and look at all the silences that are longer than 300 milliseconds, and it says it has found 86 problems. Now if you look up here, this file is 1 hour and 3 minutes long and 48 seconds, so about 1 hour 4 minutes long. So once I've scanned, I can then shorten all of that and click on there. And if you watch up here, as it processes, you'll see that the file will change length from 1 hour 3 minutes 48 seconds. Let's see how much it will take out. It's taking quite a bit. So from 1 hour 3 minutes, it has cut the file down to about 50 minutes. So it says it has cut the file down to about 50 minutes, 49:38. So that's quite a significant chunk of our file that has been reduced. So the next thing I do, now that I've deleted all the silences, the next thing I want to do is do some noise reduction. Again, if you've recorded this in the studio or in a really quiet place, this might not be necessary, but I always find that for me, I like to process my audio so that I have all the noise cut out of the file, so that when there's silence in the dialogue, it's actually silence. And in Adobe Audition, what you do is just magnify the audio and then look at these gaps where there's silence, and then select a section of that gap. And on the keyboard, you hit Shift P. And what Shift P does is it loads the current selection into Adobe Audition as the noise print for that file. And so when I go to processing the audio to remove the noise, it's going to look at that and say, this is all noise, and it's going to take it out. So I click OK. And then I go up to Effect. I go to Noise Reduction and Restoration. And then I go to Noise Reduction process. And there's a shortcut there for that. So I go there, and this is what I get. This is the dialog box. For my case, I have the noise reduction at 50% and reduced by 16 decibels. And what I found is if you are too aggressive with this, if you try and reduce the noise too much, you're going to end up with an unnatural sounding vocal or narration. So this setting is the default setting. You can always play around with the settings, but for me, default works just fine. The other thing you have to be careful about is you want to select the entire file. So you click on there and select the entire file, and then just apply. The program will go and take out all that noise and gives you better clarity on your narration. There we go. So now that I've taken out all the noise, the next thing I want to do for my file is to do some equalization. Equalization helps you to get more clarity out of your vocal. So I go up here to Effects, and I go to Filter and EQ, and I like to use the parametric equalizer on there, and this is what I get. So I've already loaded my custom setting, but you can also go up here and choose what you want. You can see for this parametric equalizer, it's mainly for music. So these are vocals, but what I do is I like the vocal enhancer for this, and so that's what I use. And if you want, you can always tweak the EQ to suit your preferences, and you can use other EQs as well. You don't have to use the parametric equalizer. You just use the one that gets you the results in terms of the quality of the voice that you're looking for, and apply. So it will process the file, and now my vocal is all EQ'd, and it's much clearer than it was before. The next thing I want to do is to work on the loudness of the file, and I want to equalize my volume so that they are compliant with the ACX standards. And so what I do is go up here to Effects, and I go to Amplitude and Compression, and go to Speech Volume Leveler. And once I do that, I get this dialog box. And what I want to do is make my target volume minus 18 dB RMS, because that is the requirement for ACX or Audible. And you can go up here and decide how you want the file processed in the presets. If I do the default, for example, the target volume is minus 12, and that's too loud for ACX. So these other ones are the ones that work. I just choose the medium and just keep the defaults as they are, and then apply to the file. And Audition is going to do its thing, and you'll see the waveform will get a bit bigger. There you go, because everything has equalized out a bit. What that does is it just reduces the dynamic range, the difference between the loudest and the softest part of your file gets a bit reduced, so that you get this consistent level of narration in the voice. Once I've done that, the next thing I want to do is to make sure that I also comply with the peak levels that are required in ACX, and that is make sure all the peaks are below minus 3 decibels. So I simply go to Amplitude and Compression, and I apply a hard limiter. And so when I do that, I just make sure that I limit the file to minus 3 dB or even minus 4, but in this case minus 3 dB is what is required. And I can also go up here and choose a preset that I want to use. So I've chosen -3 because that's what's required, and I just apply to the file. And what that does is it just makes sure that nothing gets louder than -3 decibels. And so you can see some of the audio is a bit chopped off at the top. Those are levels that were too loud. Now when I play the file and we look down here, it is going a bit into the red because it's going between -6 and -3 decibels, but it doesn't ever exceed -3 decibels. So once I've done that, then the next thing I'm doing is now going in and actually editing the audio, so cutting out any mistakes that were made in the narration and stuff like that. And once I'm done editing the actual audio, I'm nearly done. The last thing that I need to do, you need to add some room tone at the beginning and at the end of the file. And what you can do with room tone is, before you do your recording, make sure you record silence in the room that you're recording. Say about 10 to 20 seconds of silence in the room, and then you import it or open it together with your files. And so when you get to this stage, all you need to do is to now open that room tone file and then copy and paste at the beginning and at the end. And you want to make sure that at the beginning you have between 0.5, half a second, and 1 second of room tone, and at the end you want to have less than 5 seconds. So anything below 5 seconds. If you have more than 5 seconds of silence, it will be rejected. And so the other way you can do it is, when you record your audio, always make sure that you have silence at the beginning, at least 5-10 seconds at the beginning, and silence at the end of the recording, at least 5 to 10 seconds. That way, when you are now editing, you don't have to add in the room tone. It's already there. All you need to do is to trim it to the right length. In this case, we don't have any room tone at the beginning, and I didn't record anything. So what I do is I go up here to edit, and then go to insert, and I insert silence. The default is about 2 seconds, but I changed it for my editing to 1 second because that's what I was using. And so I just go OK, and it's going to add 1 second of silence at the beginning of the file. Then I just click to the end of the file, and again I go edit and insert silence, again 1 second, and that's good enough for that. The next thing is you want to export your audio, and you can do it a number of ways. One is you can just save the file. You can go up here and go save or save as. When you save, it just saves the file that is open. But I don't like doing this because it has changed my original file. As you can see, it didn't give me an option to do anything. So I prefer to either use save as. When you do save as, you get options. This is where you can name the file and you can change the different settings that are available. But even better, I like to use export. So I go export, I go file, and I get the same dialog box as save as. And so I then name the file according to ACX standards, so according to the chapters and how the book is structured. This is where you put your name. Obviously you have a choice of where you want to save it, but what's more important is this section where it says format. So you want MP3, and you can see Audible Audition gives you a lot of different formats, but what you want is your MP3 audio, and then you want your sample type. So you go change if it's different from what's required. You want to make sure this is 44.1, and you want to make sure that your bit depth is 16. Obviously you have other formats there, but you want 44.1, that's what they require. And then finally you want to go here where you're going to choose your bit rate, and so you want 192 constant bitrate. Make sure it's constant bitrate. If you go there, you can see you have other options. You can always go higher, but you can't go lower. So 192 is the minimum that you can have for an audiobook, and you go OK and OK. It's giving me an error here because I didn't choose where it should save it, so I'll just go no and browse and maybe choose downloads, and I can name it. So maybe this is 1, and then I go chapter 1, and you give it the title of that chapter. But you can go into ACX and see exactly how you're supposed to name them, and you go save and OK. And then it's going to give you a warning because these files were recorded in WAV format and they are being compressed to MP3, but that's fine. That's what is required, and you just go yes, and your file is saved. So that's how I edit my audiobooks, a simple process. You can do it in any audio editing program. You just need to know where to find the different settings that you need to change to make your files compliant. That's it for today. See you on the next one.